She lived in a small, quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other by face, if not by name. Her life had always been ordinary to the outside world. She lived alone in a modest house that had seen better days, with a small garden in front where flowers bloomed each spring, though she could not remember the last time she tended them herself. For many, she was just another elderly woman who walked slowly along the street, waving politely to neighbors she had known for years but rarely spoke to at length. Yet there was a secret inside her that few could ever guess. She had once been a pianist, a passionate one, someone who could sit at a piano for hours and make it sing with life. Music was her first love, and though she had left it behind for decades, it had never left her. Her hands, now slightly stiff with age, had once danced freely over ivory keys. Every note she played had been a story, a conversation with herself and the world. She had dreamed of playing on big stages, sharing her music with crowds that would be swept away by the beauty of her playing. But life had other plans. Responsibilities, work, family struggles, and the simple demands of survival had kept her from pursuing that dream. Over time, she had learned to tuck it away quietly, like a cherished photograph hidden in a drawer, revisiting it only in her mind when the world was still and the house was silent. For years, her piano sat untouched in a corner of her living room, covered by a thin cloth that kept dust from settling on it but could not hide its lonely presence. Sometimes she would sit nearby, tracing her fingers over the keys without pressing them, remembering the feeling of creating something beautiful from nothing. Those memories were bittersweet. They reminded her of what she had once been capable of, and of the dreams that had slipped away, unnoticed by everyone else, one chilly afternoon. She was reading the newspaper when she came across a small article tucked between other stories. It was about a television talent show that was inviting people of all ages to audition. Anyone, young or old, could perform any talent. For a moment, she laughed quietly to herself. Could someone like her really step onto a stage again? She had long stopped thinking about performing in front of strangers, let alone a television audience. But the idea refused to leave her mind. A spark that she thought had died long ago flickered inside her chest. For the first time in decades, she felt that old excitement. That nervous thrill of possibility. She considered ignoring it, telling herself that she was too old, that the world had moved on, and that television shows were not for people like her. But she could not stop thinking about the piano, the music, and the idea of finally sharing it with someone outside her quiet home. Her heart kept nudging her, reminding her that the only thing worse than failing would be never trying at all. After hours of contemplation, she made a decision that surprised even herself. She would audition. Her preparation was simple. She dusted off the piano, polished the keys, and slowly regained some of the strength in her fingers. She did not have the energy or flexibility she once had, but what she had gained over the years was experience, patience, and a depth of feeling that could not be taught. She practiced each day, playing familiar pieces and challenging herself with new ones, finding joy in every sound that echoed through the small house. Music once again became the center of her world, and with it came a quiet confidence that she had not felt in years. Her family had mixed reactions. When she told them about her plans, some smiled, offering cautious encouragement, while others worried aloud. They did not doubt her talent, but they feared the harshness of the world and the way people could be unkind, especially on a television show. They worried that she might be laughed at or dismissed because of her age. She listened politely, but in the end, she knew that this was something she had to do for herself, not for anyone else. She had spent too many years living cautiously, letting fear dictate her choices. Now, she wanted to take a risk, even if the outcome was uncertain. The day of the audition arrived. She wore a simple dress and a light scarf, dressing modestly and comfortably. Her hair was neatly done, though streaked with gray. She felt the familiar flutter of nerves in her stomach, the same sensation she had felt before performances long ago. She reminded herself that she was not performing for anyone but herself and the music, and that gave her a strange sort of calm. She carried her audition papers and walked into the building, where the show was holding tryouts. The room was full of people of all ages and talents, young singers with powerful voices Acrobats, dancers, and other performers were warming up, chatting, and practicing. She felt a pang of self-doubt. She was older than most of the other participants. Her movements were slower, her steps less assured. She could almost hear the whispers and smiles, the subtle way people sometimes judged others without intending to. She tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the piano, the music that had been a faithful companion for so many years. When it was her turn, the producers and judges looked at her with polite skepticism. They asked her a few questions, some about her experience, others about her age. They seemed unsure why someone like her was there. Their doubts were almost palpable. She could sense the unspoken question. What could an older woman possibly bring to the stage that would be memorable or impressive? She felt the weight of that skepticism, but she did not let it shake her. Instead, she took a deep breath, walked to the piano, and sat down. As she placed her fingers on the keys, she closed her eyes for a brief moment. Memories of her youth, her dreams, and the countless hours she had spent practicing came rushing back. The nervousness in her stomach did not disappear, but it transformed into focus. She began to play. The first notes were soft, tentative, but full of feeling. She allowed herself to get lost in the music, to let it flow naturally without worrying about judgment. Each note carried a part of her life story, the joys and sorrows, regrets, and the moments of quiet happiness. The judges leaned forward, listening carefully. Some of them exchanged glances, surprised by the depth of emotion in her playing. Her fingers moved with a practiced grace, creating melodies that were both delicate and powerful. The music seemed to fill the room, capturing the attention of everyone present. It was not just about technical skill. It was about heart, experience, and the ability to convey feeling through sound. Even as her hands occasionally hesitated, the honesty in her performance shone through. When she finished, there was a brief silence. The judges looked at each other, trying to process what they had just heard. Then, slowly, they began to clap. One judge smiled broadly, another nodded in appreciation, and the producers whispered among themselves, clearly impressed. She stood, feeling a mixture of relief and quiet triumph. She had done what she came to do. She had played with all her heart, and in doing so, she had reminded herself and others that talent and passion do not fade with age. She left the audition room with a sense of lightness she had not felt in years. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood she had walked past countless times. She realized that the act of trying, of taking that step onto the stage, had already changed her. She had faced the fear of judgment and emerged stronger. The piano, her lifelong companion, had once again been her voice, speaking truths that words alone could never convey. That night, she sat by her window, listening to the wind rustle through the trees. She thought about the audition, the people she had met, and the emotions she had felt. A sense of anticipation began to build inside her. She did not know what would come next, whether she would advance in the competition, or how the world would respond to her performance. But she knew one thing for certain: she had taken a step that mattered, not just for the possibility of recognition, but for the rediscovery of herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt alive in a new way. The music had returned to her life, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. She knew there would be challenges ahead, that some people would doubt her, and that the path forward would not always be easy. Yet, she also knew that she had already accomplished something significant. She had reminded herself that age is not a barrier to pursuing dreams, and that courage is not measured by years but by the willingness to try. As she prepared for the next steps of the journey, she felt a quiet excitement. She would practice diligently, refine her performance, and face whatever came with grace and determination. Her life had always been quiet, but now it felt full of possibilities. She was no longer just an ordinary woman in a small neighborhood. She was a pianist, a dreamer, and someone who had the courage to step into the unknown. And with that courage, she knew that anything could happen. The day of her television audition arrived. The woman felt a mix of excitement and nervousness she had not experienced in decades. The sky was a soft gray, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves outside her window as she prepared herself. She wore a simple dress, comfortable yet neat, and tied her hair back with care. There was a quiet dignity in the way she moved, a sense that she had arrived at a place she had long imagined but never thought she would reach. She carried her sheet music carefully, along with the hope that the music inside her would finally have a chance to be heard. As she arrived at the studio, she noticed the flurry of activity. Cameras, lights, crew members, and participants created a bustling environment. Young singers practiced vocal runs, dancers stretched and moved with precise energy. Other performers rehearsed their routines. She felt a pang of self-doubt. She was older than most of the other participants. Her movements were slower, her steps measured. She wondered if she truly belonged here. People looked at her, some with curiosity, others with polite smiles. There were whispers, subtle glances, and a few chuckles, the kind that felt dismissive. She knew that some were already judging her before she had even begun. She took a deep breath, remembering the countless hours she had spent alone with her piano, practicing until her fingers ached and the music became part of her being. She reminded herself that this was not about proving anything to the skeptics, but about honoring the music and herself. With that thought, she walked through the doors to the audition room. The bright lights and the array of cameras made her heart beat faster, but she focused on her purpose. This was her moment to reclaim a piece of her life she had set aside for so long. When she entered the audition space, the judges looked up, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and mild skepticism. One of them raised an eyebrow, another tilted their head, as if questioning why someone of her age would choose this stage. She could feel their doubt, but she did not allow it to shake her. She greeted them politely, offered a small smile, and placed her sheet music on the piano. She sat down with care, her hands resting lightly on the keys, feeling the familiar texture beneath her fingers. The memories of her youth, of long hours of practice, and of dreams once put aside flooded her mind. The judges asked a few questions. They inquired about her background, how long it had been since she last performed, and why she had decided to audition at her age. She answered simply and honestly, speaking about her lifelong love for music, the joy it had brought her, and the courage it had taken to finally follow a dream that had waited decades. Some of the judges nodded politely, but she could sense that many were still unconvinced. The room was quiet, the air filled with expectation and subtle doubt. The whispers of the audience hinted that they too were skeptical, unsure if someone so quietly dressed and older could deliver anything remarkable. She closed her eyes for a moment. Centering herself, she let her mind drift to the piano at home, where she had spent so many nights lost in melodies, and to the emotions she wanted to convey through music. She remembered the feeling of her fingers dancing across the keys, the joy, the sorrow, and the freedom of expression. The nervousness in her stomach did not disappear, but it transformed into focus. She knew that once her fingers touched the keys, the music would take over, telling the story that words could not. As she began to play, the first notes were soft, tentative, yet carried a warmth and depth that immediately drew attention. The audience, initially restless, fell silent. Even the judges leaned forward, intrigued by the delicate precision and emotion in her playing. She played each note with care, allowing the music to flow naturally from her heart. Her hands moved with grace and control, a testament to years of experience. Even if the speed and agility of youth were no longer there, the beauty of her performance lay not in technical brilliance alone, but in the emotion and storytelling woven into each phrase. Some of the audience members exchanged glances, their initial skepticism beginning to fade. The soft, deliberate sound of the piano filled the room, carrying with it a sense of nostalgia, patience, and resilience. The music spoke in a way that transcended words, touching parts of the heart that often went unnoticed. She felt herself relax, becoming fully immersed in the performance. The stage, the cameras, and the whispers faded away, leaving only the music and the audience connected through its expression. As the melody progressed, grew richer and more expressive. She allowed herself to explore subtle dynamics, shifting from tender, quiet passages to stronger, more resonant sections. Each chord carried meaning, telling a story of perseverance, longing, and hope. The room seemed to lean in, caught in the spell she was weaving. Even the judges, who had started with doubt, were visibly moved, their faces reflecting surprise and appreciation. They could not ignore the depth of feeling that radiated from her playing, a combination of skill, experience, and heartfelt emotion. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive on stage. The music became a conversation between her and the audience, a dialogue that transcended age and expectation. She played with honesty, without concern for applause or recognition, letting the piano communicate the story she had carried within her for decades. The whispers and laughter that had greeted her arrival were replaced by attentive silence. The power of the music began to change the atmosphere, drawing everyone into a shared emotional space. When she reached the climax of the piece, the music swelled, resonating through the hall with intensity and beauty. She poured all her experience, emotion, and passion into each note, creating a performance that felt both personal and universal. The audience was captivated, caught in the ebb and flow of the melody. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the authenticity and depth of the expression. Others watched in quiet awe, realizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary, something that defied their initial assumptions. As the final notes echoed and faded into silence, the room remained quiet for a heartbeat longer than expected. Then, gradually, applause began to build. First, a few hesitant claps, then more and more, until the entire room was clapping and cheering. The judges rose from their seats, some smiling broadly, others nodding in genuine admiration. The woman stood slowly, a sense of calm triumph washing over her. She had done what she came to do. She had played with all her heart, and allowed the music to speak for her. The applause continued as she bowed slightly, acknowledging the audience and the judges. Some came forward to shake her hand, offering compliments and expressing how moved they had been. She accepted their words with quiet gratitude, knowing that the true victory was not in recognition alone, but in having reclaimed a part of herself and shared it authentically. The moment was both exhilarating and humbling, a reminder that courage and passion could overcome doubt and skepticism. Backstage, the producers and crew expressed their amazement. They had not expected such a powerful performance from someone they had initially underestimated. Some admitted they had doubted she could create an impact, yet she had silenced every doubt with her playing. She listened quietly, grateful for their recognition, but aware that the real significance lay in the courage it had taken to step forward. In the beauty of the music she had created, she felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had honored her love for music and her own resilience as she left the studio that day. The sun was low in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the streets. She walked slowly, savoring the quiet after the intensity of the audition. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years, a mixture of relief, joy, and renewed purpose. She realized that the act of showing up, of taking that risk, had already transformed her. She had faced fear, doubt, and potential ridicule, and had emerged stronger, the renewed connection to her passion. That evening, at home, she sat by her piano, playing softly. The house was quiet, and the familiar comfort of the keys beneath her fingers brought peace. She reflected on the day, the reactions of the judges, and the surprise in the audience. She understood that while applause and recognition were meaningful, they were not the essence of what she had achieved. The true victory was the reclaiming of her voice, the courage to follow a dream, and the rediscovery of a part of herself that had been waiting quietly for decades. Her mind wandered to the future, imagining what lay ahead. She would continue to practice, to refine her skills, and to prepare for the next stages of the competition. But more importantly, she would embrace the joy of playing, the connection with the music, and the inspiration she could provide to others. She realized that her story had the potential to touch lives, to remind people that age, doubt, or societal expectations could never truly limit passion and talent. In the quiet of the night, she felt a sense of peace and determination. The music that had been a private solace for so many years was now a bridge to the world, a way to connect, inspire, and share her journey. She knew that challenges lay ahead, that she would face moments of doubt again, but she felt ready. The audition had shown her that courage and perseverance could lead to extraordinary moments, and she was eager to continue walking this path as she prepared for the days to come. She thought about the many people who had doubted her, the ones who had assumed that her age made her incapable. She realized that their skepticism had no power over her, unless she allowed it. By playing with honesty and heart, she had proven not just to them, but to herself, that passion and talent do not diminish with time. Her story, though still unfolding, was a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. The woman went to bed that night with a quiet smile. She had taken a significant step, one that many would consider impossible. She had faced the unknown, challenged expectations, and let her music speak for her. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to embrace it fully. For the first time when the woman sat at the piano on the television stage, she felt a rush of emotions she had not experienced in years. The bright lights and the camera lenses trained on her made her heart race. The audience was a mixture of anticipation, skepticism, and casual chatter. Some people whispered and laughed quietly, making comments about her age and appearance. It stung at first, the feeling that they did not believe she could do anything remarkable. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that the only thing that mattered was the music she carried inside. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys. She closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the countless hours she had spent practicing in her quiet home, of the time she had lost herself in melodies that no one else had heard. She remembered her youth, when her dreams had been vast and bright, and she allowed herself to feel that energy once again. As soon as her fingers pressed the first notes, a hush fell over the audience. The soft, deliberate sound of the piano filled the room, a gentle beginning that slowly drew attention. The music was not just about the notes. It carried her story. Each key she pressed seemed to tell a piece of her life, her joys, her sorrows, her quiet struggles, and the moments of happiness that had sustained her through the years. At first, the audience seemed unsure how to react. Some leaned forward, curious. Others stayed back, still skeptical. But as the melody unfolded, the emotion in her playing became impossible to ignore. There was honesty in every note, a depth that could not be faked. She played with a mix of precision and feeling, letting her years of experience guide her hands. Her movements were deliberate but flowing, creating a harmony that resonated with everyone listening. Some people felt tears prick at their eyes, moved by the unexpected beauty of the performance. Others who had doubted her skill found themselves leaning closer, captivated by the music that seemed to fill the entire hall. Even the judges, who were usually reserved, seemed caught off guard by the sheer emotional power of her playing as she continued. Her confidence grew. The initial nervousness transformed into a focused energy. She let herself be immersed in the music, forgetting the cameras, the lights, and the whispers. It was as if she and the piano were alone in the world, and the audience was just there to witness the magic. Her fingers moved with a delicate strength, creating melodies that rose and fell like waves, gentle yet commanding. The hall seemed to vibrate with the sound, each chord carrying a weight that touched everyone present. People in the audience began to react in subtle ways. Heads turned, eyes widened, and some held their breath, as if afraid to disturb the spell. The laughter and whispering that had greeted her entrance were replaced by quiet awe. The music spoke in a language beyond words, connecting with the deepest parts of everyone's hearts. It told a story of resilience, of dreams that had been postponed but never forgotten, and of the quiet determination to follow a passion no matter how many years had passed. The woman felt a sense of liberation as she played. All the years of doubt, both from herself and from others, seemed to lift. Each note was a declaration that age did not define talent, that life's delays were not failures, and that courage could overcome any skepticism. She remembered the times she had been overlooked, the moments when people assumed she could not do something remarkable. Now, every one of those doubts was being proven wrong, not through words, but through the language of music. The melody built slowly, moving from soft, tender passages to stronger, more assertive sections. Her heart guided her hands, and she allowed the emotion to dictate the rhythm and intensity. She did not play for applause or recognition. She played because she had to, because the music was part of her being, and it demanded to be heard. Her performance became a journey, taking the audience along with her through moments of reflection, joy, and quiet triumph. The room was completely absorbed, caught in the spell she had created. As the final notes approached, she felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. The climax of her piece was not about showmanship, but about truth. She poured everything she had into the ending, every emotion, every memory, every unspoken story. The last chord lingered in the air, echoing through the hall with a resonance that felt almost tangible. She released her hands from the keys slowly, savoring the quiet moment that followed. The silence that held the weight of what had just been shared. There was a beat of stunned quiet in the room, as if no one knew how to respond immediately. Then, gradually, applause began. At first, a few clapped hesitantly, then more and more joined, until the entire audience was on their feet. The judges, too, stood and clapped, some with tears glistening in their eyes. Their earlier skepticism had vanished completely, replaced by genuine admiration. She stood, feeling the warmth of their approval. But her smile was not one of vanity. It was a quiet acknowledgement of what she had achieved. She had shown the world, and herself, that talent and passion do not fade with age. The applause continued, filling the hall, and she felt an overwhelming sense of connection with everyone present. The music had broken down barriers, had silenced doubt, and had created a moment of shared humanity. People came up to her afterward, some with tears in their eyes, expressing their surprise and gratitude for the emotions she had stirred. They spoke of how they had been moved, how they had felt her story through the music, and how they would carry the memory of this performance with them. Backstage, the producers and staff were buzzing with excitement. They discussed how rarely someone could create such a powerful emotional impact, especially someone whose appearance had led them to doubt her abilities. They marveled at her skill and presence, realizing that she had turned what many had expected to be a quiet, forgettable audition into a performance that would be remembered. She accepted their compliments with humility, feeling proud not for the recognition, but for the act of reclaiming a part of herself that had long been hidden. As she walked away from the piano, she felt a lightness in her step. The performance had been more than just a success. It had been a personal triumph. It had reminded her that it was never too late to pursue a dream, to embrace one's passion, or to show the world what one was capable of. The doubts, the ridicule, and the years of waiting did not diminish the value of the music she could create. On the contrary, they had enriched it, giving it depth and meaning that could touch hearts in ways technical skill alone could never achieve. Later, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment, the quiet evenings spent practicing, the moments of doubt, the encouragement and concern from her family. The decision to take a risk all of it had led to this one magical performance. She realized that every challenge she had faced, every delay in pursuing her dream, had added to the richness of her music. She had learned that patience, perseverance, and courage were as much a part of her talent as her fingers and training. As she left the television studio that day, she knew that the performance would have an impact beyond the immediate audience. Clips would be shared online, stories would be told, and many would be inspired by the courage of an older woman who dared to follow her passion. Yet for her, the most important part was the knowledge that she had finally honored herself and her music. She had reclaimed a part of her life that had been waiting quietly, patiently for decades, and in doing so, she had proven to herself that dreams do not have an expiration date. That night, she sat alone in her home, the piano standing quietly in the corner. She played softly, not for an audience, not for television cameras, but for herself. Each note was a celebration of resilience, a reminder that talent and courage could flourish at any age. She smiled quietly, thinking of the faces of the audience and the judges, and felt a deep sense of peace. She had faced skepticism, fear, and doubt, and had emerged with her passion and dignity intact. The music was hers again, free and alive. And she knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that could inspire not just herself, but countless others who had ever been told it was too late to follow their dreams. The applause after her performance was overwhelming. It seemed to go on forever, echoing in the walls of the studio as she sat at the piano, her hands resting lightly on the keys. She had never experienced anything like this before. The skepticism, the doubt, the quiet whispers that had accompanied her when she first walked on stage were gone. Instead, there was admiration, respect, and an undeniable sense of awe. People were clapping not just for her skill, but for the courage it had taken to step into a world that had long assumed she could not belong. She slowly stood and faced the audience, trying to take in the faces around her. Many were smiling, some had tears in their eyes, and a few were still clapping as if they could not stop. She felt a lump in her throat, a mixture of relief and gratitude. Years of being overlooked and underestimated had led to this moment, and it was more than she could have imagined. She realized that this applause was not just for the music she had played, but for the message it carried. That age, appearance, or past setbacks could never truly limit what a person could achieve. The judges approached her one by one, each offering words of encouragement and praise. One spoke about how her performance had touched him deeply, noting the emotion and storytelling in her music. Another commented on the precision and control she maintained, saying that talent like hers could inspire people of all ages. She listened quietly, nodding politely, feeling warmth spread through her chest. The recognition was humbling, but it was not what made her heart swell. What mattered most was that she had reclaimed a piece of herself and shared it with others in a way that resonated. Backstage, the energy was different from what she had expected. Usually, she had imagined television sets as intimidating, artificial, and cold, but now she found a genuine excitement. Other participants came over, some expressing surprise and admiration. They told her how her music had moved them, how they had not expected someone of her age to play with such depth and emotion. Their reactions were sincere, free of judgment or pretense. Oh, she smiled at each of them, grateful for their kindness, and felt a renewed sense of connection. For the first time, she understood that talent was not about youth or appearance. It was about heart, passion, and perseverance. As she walked through the hallways of the studio, noticed the crew talking quietly about her performance. They had been impressed, even moved. Some admitted that they had expected her to falter, to struggle, or to be forgotten among the more flamboyant acts. Instead, she had stunned everyone. She realized that her journey had been as much about proving something to herself as it had been about proving it to anyone else. The courage it had taken to step onto that stage and play, to put herself in a position to be judged, was the true triumph. The day after the performance, clips of her playing began to circulate online. Comments poured in from people all over the world, many expressing disbelief at how beautifully she played and how young at heart her music sounded. Some spoke about how inspiring it was to see someone defy expectations, to follow a dream despite years of being told it was too late. Others shared their own stories of postponed passions, feeling encouraged to try again. She read a few of these comments quietly, a soft smile playing on her lips. She did not feel pride in a boastful way, but a sense of quiet fulfillment. Her story was touching people in ways she could not have imagined. The next stage of the competition approached, and with it came nerves she had not yet felt. This time, she would face a larger audience, more cameras, the added pressure of knowing that her performance had already set a high expectation. She practiced diligently, returning to the piano in her living room every day. Her fingers were not as quick as they once had been, but her experience, discipline, and emotional depth made her playing richer than ever. She approached each practice session with a calm determination, knowing that preparation was as important as talent. When she arrived at the new venue, she could feel the energy in the air. The audience was larger, the lights brighter, and the whispers of doubt were not completely gone. Some people still questioned why she was there, why an older woman was performing when the spotlight usually belonged to younger talents. She ignored these murmurs, focusing instead on the music and the story she wanted to tell. She had learned that the opinions of others could not control her passion. What mattered was her commitment to her craft and the honesty with which she played. On stage, she felt the familiar rush of excitement mixed with a quiet nervousness. She sat at the piano and let her fingers rest lightly on the keys. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and let her memory carry her to the countless hours she had spent practicing, imagining herself playing in front of a receptive audience. She began to play, starting with soft, tentative notes that gradually built into a rich, flowing melody. The music moved naturally, each chord carrying emotion and experience. She allowed herself to be completely immersed in the performance, forgetting everything except the sound of the piano and the story she was telling through it. As the audience listened, a transformation occurred. The initial skepticism melted away, replaced by awe and admiration. People leaned forward, caught in the spell of the music. Some whispered to each other, noting how extraordinary it was to witness someone play with such depth and feeling. The judges, too, were captivated, their expressions a mixture of surprise, respect, and emotion. They had not anticipated that she could create such a powerful impact, and yet here she was, proving that talent and courage could not be measured by age. The performance continued, rising and falling like waves, carrying the audience through moments of tenderness, reflection, and quiet triumph. Her fingers moved with grace and control, weaving together a melody that spoke of her journey, her resilience, and her passion. The music was more than technical skill. It was storytelling, an expression of a lifetime of experiences and emotions. People in the audience felt the weight of her story, and many were moved to tears. It was a reminder that music could bridge generations, touch hearts, and convey what words often could not. When the final notes faded into silence, the audience erupted into applause once again. This time, it was louder, more heartfelt, and more enduring. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, and expressing their admiration. Some judges were visibly emotional, openly acknowledging that they had underestimated her. She stood, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and peace. The recognition was meaningful, but more important was the knowledge that she had honored her passion, embraced her courage, and shared something beautiful with the world. Afterward, interviews followed. She spoke softly and humbly about her experience, emphasizing the joy of playing and the importance of following one's dreams, regardless of age. She shared that she hoped her story could inspire others to pursue their passions. Even if the world seemed skeptical or dismissive, viewers from around the country responded warmly, expressing gratitude for her courage and for the reminder that it is never too late to follow a dream. Letters, messages, and calls poured in, one reinforcing the impact of her performance and the universal appeal of her message. Through it all, she remained grounded. She knew that this was not just a personal achievement, but a moment that could touch others in meaningful ways. She continued to practice, to play for herself, and to share her music whenever she could. The television appearances were exciting, but they were secondary to the simple joy of creating music that spoke from the heart. She realized that her journey was larger than the competition. It was about courage, persistence, and the beauty of embracing life fully, no matter the circumstances. Her story began to spread beyond the show. People spoke about her courage, her talent, and the way she had challenged expectations. She became a symbol of hope for those who had put aside dreams or allowed doubt to take hold. Invitations to perform at smaller events and community gatherings arrived, and she accepted them quietly, with a smile. Each performance was an opportunity to share not just music, but a message that passion and perseverance could transcend age, and that dreams deferred were not dreams forgotten. In the quiet moments at home, she returned to her piano, finding comfort and satisfaction in the familiar keys. She played softly, savoring the way the music echoed in her living room, connecting her past and present. She reflected on how far she had come from the quiet life she had lived, to the moment she had stepped onto the television stage and beyond. Each note she played was a celebration of resilience, courage, and the enduring power of dreams. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that each day offered a chance to grow, to inspire, and to continue sharing the gift she had carried within her for so many years. Through all the recognition and applause, she remained humble, remembering the quiet evenings of practice that had brought her here. She had been underestimated, overlooked, and sometimes dismissed, but she had never allowed those experiences to define her. Instead, she had let her love for music guide her, and it had led her to moments of triumph that were richer and more meaningful than she could have imagined. She realized that the true reward was not the applause or the attention, but the rediscovery of her own strength, courage, and the beauty of embracing her passion without fear. The weeks following her television performances were a whirlwind of attention, messages, and new opportunities. Her life, once quiet and predictable, had shifted in ways she had never imagined. People who had once overlooked her now spoke of her with admiration and respect. She received letters and emails from strangers who shared their own stories of postponed dreams and fears about taking risks, thanking her for showing that courage and passion do not fade with age. Each message touched her deeply, but she approached them with the same humility she had carried all her life. She knew that the real achievement was not the recognition she received, but the fact that she had rediscovered herself and shared her music with honesty and heart. Her schedule gradually filled with invitations to perform at community events, charity concerts, and local gatherings. Each performance was smaller than the television stage, but each felt equally meaningful. She played for people who came not for entertainment alone, but for inspiration. Her music spoke to them in ways words could not, conveying resilience, hope, and the beauty of embracing life fully. She found joy in seeing faces light up with surprise and emotion, realizing that even a simple melody could create connections that transcended age, culture, and circumstance. Despite the attention, she remained grounded in her daily routines. Each morning, she would make herself a cup of tea, tend briefly to her garden, and sit at the piano in her living room. These moments of quiet practice were sacred, allowing her to reflect on her journey and continue refining her craft. She did not see the piano as a path to fame, but as a companion and a channel through which she could express herself and inspire others. Her music was personal, yet it had the power to touch countless lives, a gift she carried with both humility and pride. As word of her story spread, journalists and media outlets sought interviews, eager to capture the essence of her journey. She spoke softly about the importance of pursuing dreams regardless of age or circumstance. She emphasized that fear and doubt were natural, but they should never prevent someone from trying. Her story resonated widely, particularly with people who had abandoned hobbies, passions, or ambitions for reasons that now seemed insignificant in light of her courage. Many viewers saw themselves in her determination and found the motivation to revisit their own postponed aspirations. One afternoon, she received a message from a local school inviting her to play at a special assembly. The school wanted her to perform for students, teachers, and families as an example of perseverance and the pursuit of dreams. She agreed gladly, knowing that her experience could encourage young and old alike. When the day arrived, she was greeted with eager faces and a buzz of excitement. Children peered curiously at her, some whispering to friends, others watching intently as she took her place at the piano. She felt a familiar rush of nerves, but allowed it to transform into focus and energy. As she began to play, the room grew silent. The music flowed naturally, each note carefully chosen, conveying emotion and telling a story without words. Students and teachers alike were captivated. Some leaned forward in their seats, others closed their eyes to absorb the sound fully. Even those who had been skeptical or distracted were drawn in, reminded of the power of patience, dedication, and the courage to follow one's passions. When she finished, the applause was enthusiastic and heartfelt, a reminder that her journey was more than personal achievement, was inspiration in action. The experience reinforced her belief that age was never a barrier to meaningful accomplishment. It was a lesson she carried with her each day as she continued to practice and perform. She experimented with new compositions, blending familiar pieces with her own interpretations and creating arrangements that reflected both her skill and life experiences. Her music became richer, more layered, and deeply expressive, drawing from decades of living, observing, and feeling. Each performance was an opportunity to connect, to share, to inspire. She also began mentoring young musicians in her community, offering guidance and encouragement. They were eager to learn not only about technique, but about passion, resilience, and the courage to pursue goals without fear of judgment. She shared stories from her own life, the challenges she had faced, and the moments that had tested her resolve. She emphasized that mistakes, setbacks, and delays were all part of the journey, and that perseverance and love for one's craft were the true keys to success. Her mentorship created bonds that went beyond music, fostering confidence and self-belief in those she guided. As months passed, she noticed subtle changes within herself. Her confidence grew, not from external validation, but from the realization that she had reclaimed her voice and purpose. The world's recognition was meaningful, but the deeper satisfaction came from knowing that she had dared to dream again and had followed through with courage. She had faced the skepticism and mockery of others, and instead of shrinking away, she had played boldly, proving that talent and passion were timeless.